Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we're tackling productivity, one of the construction sector's most persistent and costly challenges. The UK infrastructure industry is under huge pressure as it copes with economic challenges, a shrinking workforce and a pipeline of increasingly complex projects, creating major infrastructure schemes to transform our energy, water and transport systems, tackling a 1.5 million house construction target and constant battles to renew the ageing assets that glue our society together. And it's clear that delivering more with less is no longer optional, it is absolutely critical. And yet, while technology, manufacturing and logistics have all seen huge productivity gains in recent decades, construction has stubbornly lagged behind. And that's why the Construction Productivity Taskforce was established, to bring clients, contractors, consultants and supply chain partners together to find practical ways to change the game. And its latest report is called Improving Construction Productivity, Practical Insights from Pilot Site Studies. And it doesn't just set out ideas, it actually draws on 3 live complex projects to demonstrate what really works on site. And of course, what doesn't. And the findings are compelling. The evidence shows that measurable, repeatable improvements are possible, and more importantly, they're available right now. So to explore the report's findings and what they of course mean for the industry at large, I'm joined by Peter Jones, Operations Director at Skanska and Visiting Professor at Loughborough University. And as a member of the task force, Peter is uniquely placed to explain not just the research, but actually how to embed its recommendations across the sector. So Peter, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you, and welcome to you too, Anthony.
Well, Peter, let's start off by setting out a bit about what's behind the report. Give us the motivation that really was the impetus for this Improving Construction Productivity report, and why now?
So the real impetus was the realisation that the industry has been looking to improve productivity for many years now. We can go back 20, 30 years about this. And it was a coming together of like-minded individuals, senior people across construction, developers, contractors, designers and supply chain partners. And really to say, look, we can do something here. We've got projects at our fingertips where we can test and trial ways of which we can really move this dial. So it was really coming together at that point to do that. And also in the climate that we're seeing in the industry, particularly post-COVID, with an absolute diminishing construction workforce, but the spending needs for the built environment still very high in the country. So putting them together, clearly we needed more output for the input, and that's really the productivity equation. It's output over inputs, and trying to get more for less was the main motivation.
Yeah.
And can we collect evidence-based data from real live construction sites that everyone can relate to really show how we can drive productivity improvement?
Well, the report stresses that productivity should become a habit. So why has construction struggled, as you say, so much over the last few decades to make the productivity gains that are needed, perhaps compared to other industries?
Because it's generally a coming together of different people each time we build. Even if it's the same companies, it doesn't mean to say they're going to have the same teams. So you've got a very wide number of stakeholders, you've got a large supply chain, and it always comes down to the people and those behaviours. And so there's a lot that needs to happen to really make that team gel. And so what this habit is about is, when that happens, is there a common framework that team can apply to bring them together, build that trust, build that collaboration, very much focused around production control and productivity, willingness to share data, willingness to share ideas, and have a common purpose of delivering the best outcome for that project. That's the habit, and that's what we've been trying to do with our publications, is provide the tools to get that consistent approach when that team comes together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people, Peter, maybe they'll, when you mention productivity, there's an initiatives that the industry is coming up with to tackle it. There's a lot of eye rolling because we've been trying to make these changes for decades now, and we've had many groups that have been brought together. Tell us about the Construction Productivity Taskforce. What exactly is the task force, and why is bringing that sort of cross-sector collaboration so important right now?
So Construction Productivity Taskforce formed in 2020. It was a coming together of senior leaders across primarily at that stage London commercial sector clients and contractors and suppliers to form quite a small group. It's only about sort of eight or 10 companies, and it was really about, well, we've got a diminishing workforce in the industry, and that's been going on now since probably post-COVID, even more exaggerated by that. But at the same time, there's still an increase in spend, and I know that's still fluctuating with government decisions at the moment. But the commercial sector and other private sectors, there is a big pipeline of work coming through. So there was a clear, compelling change for getting more for less, and that's really what we're about when we talk about productivity. It's that getting that greater output for the inputs we put in, that getting more for less, and that's the concept of where can we do work to really collate that evidence base to really understand why we've not been able to move the dial on that output against the inputs. What's been the barriers to that? How can we unlock those barriers? So it's not a huge organisation at the moment. We're looking for build that membership, but it's very much positioned to be a thought leader and a catalyst of change. We're not looking to completely, have this huge sort of organisation. It's very much, let's do some focused work and then let's produce some thought leadership pieces that can hopefully provide a catalyst. And that's what we're trying to do.
Because, and I get the impression, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's quite focused on practical steps that you can take rather than perhaps where we were producing reports coming up with grid theory. It's about practical steps.
Absolutely. And that's always been the ethos. And this is the third of a series of reports. And the first two were very much laying the groundwork for setting out frameworks around productivity measurement and also a playbook that I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment. And then this next part was then, okay, we've set the framework. Now let's put that into action. And now let's run some pilot sites where we can start collecting evidence that these tools are working.
Well, let's talk about the report. It draws on, as I say, three live pilot sites. Tell us about them. They were One Broadgate, Timber Square, and the Vehicle Storage Support Programme. As I say, all chosen as these pilot schemes. Tell us about the projects and why.
So the why was coming together of the membership. So on the membership, British Land, Landsec, Great Portland Estates. We've got Mace, clearly Skanska. We've got McAlpine, SRM, and Lendlease, and also a specialist supply chain in the form of Morris Rowe. And so it was really looking at what the members could bring to the table around projects that are ideal to run as pilot sites. So therefore, One Broadgate, commercial office, centre of London, the Liverpool Street Station in that whole Broadgate area. Timber Square, really interesting project from Landsec and Mace, where trying out a lot of different techniques, not least around modern methods construction, off-site manufacturing. And the VSSP, the vehicle storage, was more of let's try and just focus on London. Let's see if we can bring a project more on a regional basis that is a bit different from a London commercial office, and see how we can apply it to that type of project.
And why, having done this work, why would you say that using these real world projects was so powerful for the work then?
Oh, well, read the report, you'll see. It's the evidence. It's the evidence being prepared. It's what the studies have done. They've not tried to do a full blanket approach to productivity measurement. It's been very focused on specific packages.
Right.
So, for instance, One Broadgate focused very much on the superstructure being delivered by Morris Rowe, and then the cladding, putting the facade on the building. Timber Square very much focused on also the superstructure and the cladding, and at VSSP also focusing on specifically the steel package construction, but we also use that to look at design productivity through looking at how integrated design planning can drive productivity. So it's been very much on that. And so this isn't trying to say, well, not necessarily to get benchmarks of these. These studies are all about use the pilot sites to identify productivity enablers and disruptors. That was the aim. It was like, let's measure that, but let's really get below it and say, why is there variability? Why have we got, what are those disruptors? What are those enablers? And is there any commonality across the three projects?
Well, you mentioned those two words, productivity enablers and productivity disruptors. I think you kind of touched on it there, but give us a clearer definition. What do you mean by those two particular terms?
So in terms of disruptors, so there's been quite a bit of work done on this, but the work we did on these pilot sites has given evidence to that. But you could have a disruptor might be you're expecting a certain level of workforce to turn up on a day and it doesn't turn up. You might be planning to use the tower crane on a certain day, and because of something's happened somewhere else on the site, the crane's not available, disrupting that. It may be that your logistics plan's not quite working. It may be the weather's come in and disrupted. On the enabler side, it's about what are those factors that we can clearly see can improve productivity. And clearly off-site manufacturing, if you get a chance to read and look at the Timber Square site, did a lot of work around off-site manufacturing and seeing the benefits of that. Digital technology is another real big theme coming through this study that we did, and that whole use and better use of data just to measure what's happening is helping. So the various disruptors, but I'd say that key thing for me, as well as the enablers and disruptors, the other thing that emerged from these studies was just the level of variability. That has got to be, and it isn't about, take steelwork. It's not about how fast that person is fixing bolts into steelwork. That's not it. It's about what's happening behind that person to get that steel piece to him or her and fix those bolts.
Which is why you're kind of trying to change perhaps the practical definition of productivity, trying to get away from maybe the traditional measures of time, cost and quality to get slightly more deeper. How are you now defining productivity then?
It's been I think it has been a mind changer. It has been. What are you setting out to do today?
Right.
Whether it's steel pieces, it's cladding pieces, it's brickwork, it's dry line. What are we setting out to do today? And come the end of the day, did we achieve that? If we did achieve that, great. Let's move on to tomorrow. If we didn't, why didn't we achieve that? What disrupted us? Yeah. So therefore, tomorrow, what are we going to do differently to mitigate that disruption and move the project forward? So it's moving it to more of a production control approach day to day, rather than, yes, we put 15 pieces of steel up today. Great. Okay, fine. But tomorrow, we only put 12. Okay. Why was that? What happened? It's getting right down to that daily production control, which is then linked to your master program, whether that's on a 2-week look ahead, a monthly or a 3-month look ahead. It's getting it right down to say, okay, we're looking to achieve this over the next 2 weeks, but what are we needing to achieve today? Is everyone aligned to that? Is everyone briefed? Everyone know what we're doing? Let's set off. And by the end of the day, let's have a debrief. And let's say, did we achieve that today? When we set out on the Construction Productivity Taskforce, it was all about, let's collect the data, let's get benchmarks. Let's get a repository of data. It's not. It's about production control, because every project is going to be unique in a way. But if we're controlling those productivity disruptors and enablers, and we know day to day where we are and what we've achieved, we're much more in control.
Which goes straight back to that whole practicality, making sure that what you're doing is practical. What surprised you most about the findings then, Peter?
Variability. Honestly, it's the variability. And when you look at the summary paper, what we've pulled out is examples across the 3 sites of variability. And that's the thing for me. When we went into this, we were looking at disruptors, enablers, but what emerged was variability. And And if I can just expand on that, during these studies, I got the chance to go and visit an automotive engine building facility, Toyota. I was invited to go. And I thought, we've had a lot of this in the industry in the past, the John Egan's report and all that about looking at automotive. And I was part of that type of work. So I went in with quite clear, just trying to keep my head clear. And what I just picked up from that visit was the real minimal variability a factory like that has. They set out, let's say, to build 100 engines. And there's very little variability in that, providing the machine doesn't break down, or maybe sometimes their workforce doesn't turn up, or they've messed up on supply chain. It didn't really happen. It was mainly breakdowns that they were then quickly onto. But providing they hit their 100 engines every time, and the variability, and I was trying to put that back into a construction context, because we were doing these studies at the time, and I thought, just trying to put cladding pieces in place on a daily basis, the amount of variability risk in trying to achieve that.
Because that might be through the weather, or it might be through lack of staff, or staff who don't know what they're doing, or they're new, or whatever. Or it may just simply be that the tolerances are not right, or whatever.
Or your design's not quite complete as you thought. So that's why I said it's not about what's happening necessarily at the work face, about fixing these components. It's the things behind it. Have we fully planned out before that to keep that variability as minimal as we're able, whether the crane's available, whether the piece of kit's turned up, you've got your workforce in place, you haven't had poor weather. Yeah, it's so interesting.
All of which, Peter, sounds disturbingly obvious, but there you go. Common sense is not that common. No, let's talk a bit about you, Peter, because I mean, you're clearly incredibly passionate about changing this and making the industry up its game and giving it some new ideas to make it work better. Both as your work at Skanska, but also you're a visiting professor at Loughborough University. What makes you well placed to contribute to this task force? Is it your kind of your experience that you've been doing it for years, or is it this open mind that basically says why?
Really good question, actually, Anthony. Not really sure. I think it certainly, my whole career has been driven by working in new areas where there's opportunities to change. There's no doubt if I look through my career. And so for me, this has been about getting involved when I had the opportunity to get involved in the task force, and really seeing that there's a real opportunity here. We've got a body of top end developers, contractors, suppliers, all with a common purpose of trying to look at how can we turn that dial of productivity. And I just found that was a great environment. And so I did a lot of work. I've done a lot of work to lead on these things. Someone's got to sit down and actually get these publications together. And I just like to look at, why are these things happening? Like you say, and how can we change these? And I think then through my connections with Loughborough that go back some years, my contacts there were picking up on this, and they said, "Look, this is a significant area of the industry. Come and have a chat with us because we're looking to extend our visiting professors, and it'd be great to get you on board here." And so that's really how it's come about. But it is that you can see I get passionate about these things and I really want to change it.
But you're not just another academic then, Peter, just trying to change the world from behind your desk. I mean, there's practical experience, I imagine, particularly from your lived experience, but also from the live projects that you've been looking at here, which feed into the research.
So a bit of very, very quick background. So I'm a chartered civil engineer by profession, and so I came through a very traditional route in my early days, going into engineering consultancy. I then had I did actually then spend some time, I went off and did a PhD, but that's by the by. Then I came back and then I got involved in the Movement for Innovation, the Sir John Egan report at that point. And that was a real changer for me. And from that, I then moved into design management with Skanska. So that's when I started working on a number of, big projects, public sector projects, prisons, defence, establishments and education establishments, hospitals. And so then just worked up through that and then got more into the technical role. But I always had that probably academic mindset within construction. But yeah, I've for pretty much all my time at Skanska, it's been very much front-end projects, delivering project. But I've always had that inquiry mind that come from my academia type experience.
Thing is, though, I mean, Egan, or Latham's over 30 years ago. Egan's coming up 30 years. It was 1998, wasn't it? So we're coming up to 30 years with Egan. And, you know, I suppose when you look back, do you think that the work that the task force is doing right now is taking that work forward, or is it saying, do you know what, we did all that and it didn't really work, and we need to go in a new direction, or is it just an extension? Yeah.
That's a great question. From my experience, a great question. So when I was involved with Sir John Egan and Movement for Innovation at that time, then it was so new, I think. The concepts that were being pushed by that report was all around the construction industry should be more like the automotive. And even by working on Movement for Innovation, I wasn't really clued in, what does this actually mean for construction? And there was a lot of talk at that point. Oh, we're talking mobile construction sites. This isn't like an automobile factory. And so I think it moved the dial so far. But you're absolutely right. Coming back now, they say, nearly 30 years, and getting involved in the Construction Productivity Taskforce, and then doing what we've done and applying that thought we had back in 30 years ago, I'm then starting to get it. And I must say, it was that visit to Toyota, because I thought, this is really taking me back to those days, but I'm looking at it with different eyes, and I'm just looking at it. As I've said previously, it is the big thing for me. Oh my gosh. For me, that's the key. You look at car manufacturing, variability in their production control is minuscule. You look at a big office building in London or any infrastructure project, and you then start measuring variability day to day. Oh my gosh, it's off the scale. And I think that's what Sir John Egan was trying to say. I do, but it didn't quite come across then. I think it was just a bit too new. I think it's starting to land now. Starting to land.
So same message, but you just need to really get it across in a more understandable and a more, I suppose, deliverable, practical way.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. What do you get up to, Peter, when you're not solving industry's productivity problems?
Although I used to play a lot of rugby, a lot of cricket in my time, I'm now at a point where I just love watching those sports. So for me, I do like watching sport. The summer's very much around, getting to a test match, getting to some 100 games or some 2020 blasts. Just love that. And in the winter months, it's all about my rugby, whether it's watching Saracens or watching the internationals. I'm fortunate enough to have some benches at Murrayfield. My wife's Scottish, and we're always annually going up there to watch the Scottish internationals. Even better when they're playing England. And then it's very much doing stuff away from work, and it's very much around the family orientated business. But I love running, do a lot of running, love my swimming. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Very family orientated person. Love to make the distinction between work and life balance. So yeah, that's how I like to spend my time.
Great. Well, no. Well, you're going to have it's all going to start off again rapidly.
The new Prem kicked off last night. So the new Rugby Premiership kicked off last night. So it's excellent to get back into it.
And of course, we're recording this just before the England women's rugby final, of course. So by the time this comes out, we'll know who wins that. So interesting times. Well, let's drill into a bit more about the report and have a quick rob through some of the case studies. I mean, just have a quick chat about each of them. I mean, we'll start with the number one, Broadgate. I mean, what would you say are the unique lessons that come from that urban complexity?
Very, typical commercial office, postage stamp sort of site, logistics, clearly getting that organised. And these aren't new concepts for building those type of buildings in London. Every contractor building a building like that deals with this. But it was good to have that document in now and looking at, how impactful logistics is on a site like that, and, pushing for holding areas off site so you can be more efficient in getting your materials to a site. The other key finding in that report was how dependent these buildings are on the tower crane, and that could be a huge disruptor. Yeah. And so a lot of the work that SRM did there was to really look at, it was a term we were struggling with in the report, but it's ended up being sort of local logistics or very workplace specific logistics. But what it's trying to do is say there's other means of building without the need for the tower crane to take off the dependency and variability. Yeah. So they've done some great work to look at how they re-engineered or re-sequenced the cladding works so that they didn't need the crane and they could do more localized. So in the end, they were able to work across 3 floors at once rather than waiting on the crane. Fantastic. At Timber Square, as I said, it very much, Neil Pennell at Landsex driven a great project there, really looking at the use of modern methods of construction, off-site manufacturing, and really testing it on a project like that, of how that can best be used. I think there's a lot of learning there around, again, it's about that logistics piece. We talk about the variability and making sure that you're fully planned around your tower crane usage, your number of tower cranes, your site supply to get those off-site manufactured elements to site at the right time. Yeah.
I suppose, and it's treating that construction project in the same way that, as you say, Toyota would treat its engine manufacturer, making sure you get all the bits that you need in the right place at the right time so that you can build the building or the engine.
Do we plan enough? We have lots of programs, schedules, but do we plan enough to the right level of detail so we can look at a day, as I said previously, what we set out to do today, at the end of the day, did we achieve it? VSSP was 2 things, really looking at the impact of good design management, good integrated design planning can have on delivery of quite a complex project. The work is not massively complex, but over at that project, we've got 16 buildings to build, all at different phases and going on at once. So delivering the design for that, very complex operation. So really focused in on design planning. We used a company called Adept Management Limited, who are experts in this integrated design planning, and it's been a huge success. And then the other part was looking at the steelwork construction and really looking at the enablers, disruptors to that operation. So yeah, quite a wide range of work.
Common themes coming across all 3 then?
Common themes to really maximise adopting what we've done on these sites into something that's scalable and repeatable. It needs to start from the leadership on the project. The leadership is the main thing, the real driver, because what you need to be able to do is have trust to share data and to share learnings and share approaches.
That's you might call a productive culture, would you say?
Absolutely, and really set the scene at that stage. I think there's no doubt around the variability. As I said, it's why we focused on this summary paper around the variability, and I'll probably stress that enough on this. I think the early supply chain engagement is another. Yeah. As a contractor, you can't do this alone. It's not going to be effective unless you really bring it early days. We're going to go ahead we're going to really start controlling production in a much more detailed way. To do that, everyone needs to buy into this.
Well, we also hear an awful lot about the way that digital technologies are going to really transform. Well, arguably they already are transforming, but are they transforming? Are they moving the needle sufficiently on productivity right now?
Do you know what? I'd say definitely glass half full on this. I've done a lot of work in this area over the last 5 years at Skanska about really bringing in digital technologies and our use of data. And we have, it does. We've got so much technology at our fingertips now that could really transform how we deliver projects, whether that's through just the way we use the data coming out day to day, like we talked about in the production control, whether it's the opportunity for using digital cameras on sites for all sorts of things around quality control, around vehicle movements, around health and safety, management. And then you look at some of the tools now that are coming through for tracking production, tracking productivity in essence. And yes, there's an investment there, but again, this report is showing these tools make a difference because you're getting more visibility on what's happening on the site. You've got the data to tell you what's happening, so you can act on that data and make a difference.
Yeah. Looking at wider implications there, but I mean, how would you say clients and project sponsors should use this report?
I would say give it a read, take heed, and look at the findings. This can't be just seen as a group of senior leaders in industry giving their thoughts, which is what the first report was about when we set frame. This is now, look, we've gone out 3 projects. This is the evidence we've collected.
This is beyond academia.
It's absolutely, and we've collected this through some serious projects here, and this is what it's telling us. So it's not just us telling you that we think this is now proving these are the factors that could enable greater productivity. So I'd like to think that this will have an impact for those who take to read the report and look at the findings and the recommendations and really see that there is something here that could really move that dial forward. So I'm hoping, leaders can pick this up. Project managers can look at this report and pick it up, and designers can pick this up and take something from it into their projects and say, there is something here that can really move this forward.
Because there are some big risks around inaction. If the industry doesn't get more productive, then we're just simply not going to be able to deliver the kind of missions that this government is setting out.
Exactly, and for the drivers of the Construction Productivity Taskforce, we're losing workforce, but we've got a lot of work still to deliver in this industry, and so something's got to change about that input-output equation. Yeah. So it's got to change.
Which, of course, brings me to what should government policy be doing to support this agenda then? Because I mean, government needs the industry to be fully functioning, fully productive. What do you think it could do?
I think it can. 2 things coming out of these reports that clearly need investment: off-site manufacturing, no doubt about it. The evidence is clear. If we build a building with off-site manufacturing, you're going to be more productive on site, no doubt. And then that digital piece, but the digital piece is around training and greater learning of really understanding the power of data and digital technologies. So I think on both those fronts, I think that the government have got to understand that there's an upskilling required across the industry, particularly around those 2 elements, because they are clearly becoming the 2 key enablers to greater productivity.
Well, there's certainly an awful lot of people from the industry now around the government tables and trying to influence it, whether it's through the skills mission or whether it's through reports like this. So I think those messages are getting across. But I suppose finally, having done all this work, what would you say? Can you give us a description? What's in your mind, Peter, about what a future-ready productivity might look like in 10 years' time?
That's a great question again, because absolutely. I think we're striving, I certainly feel I'm striving to get a fully digital construction site. Okay? And what I mean by that is, the technology allows us to bring that factory to the site. It's never going to be replicated. But when you go to a factory and look at the way these manufacturers are using their data now on the workplace, they pretty much can know everything that's going on in their factory. Okay? So that they can act on that. I talked about when I was at Toyota and there's a machine breakdown. They're straight on it. They can see it straight away. It comes up in their data. Get on it. Get that line moving again. And so in my head, I can feel that we're moving towards a fully digitized construction site where everything happening on that site is being recorded, or there's visibility so that those actions can be taken much quicker. And this isn't just about productivity. You think about the opportunities in health and safety for digital technology to almost get to a point where it should be a fail-safe system of work, that there's so much data tracking that we're seeing issues happen before they happen.
Yeah.
So that's for me. I 10 years, I don't know, Anthony. I don't know 10 years, but that's where I feel we're moving towards. We're on that journey. We talked about some of the things that need to happen to make that happen, but that's what I'd like to see.
Well, Peter, I think the key thing is that what this report does is actually tries to go for these practical responses and actually try to underline things that are happening well, and things that can be repeatable, because we have been, well, the exciting thing and the depressing thing is we've been talking about this for 3 decades, and we surely now need to move forward and make actually these things happen. So look, thanks so much for talking me through the report today. Great report, really, really interesting, and I think a really exciting point in the industry, just simply because of the amount that this sector needs to do to really change the fundamentals of this country, which is the infrastructure that we relies on. So thanks very much for joining me today.
Anthony, thank you for the opportunity. Thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. Thank you.
Brilliant stuff, Noel. I certainly enjoyed it as well, and I enjoyed reading the report. So do get hold of a copy of the report. That you can go and grab it from the Construction Productivity Taskforce website. I'll put a link on the show notes there so that you can go and grab that, have a look at it, and enjoy. But that's all we've got time for today on the podcast. We've got more in the pipeline, though, and more guests to talk to as we continue to probe the big issues faced across the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you find background information. And as I say, I'll put the links to this report on there, but all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So thanks again for joining us. Thanks again to Peter, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.